It wasn't the scandals the public saw that ruined Hollywood's golden marriages. It was the secrets they never printed. In an era when image meant everything, forbidden affairs shattered the unions that studios swore were unbreakable. But what really went on behind those locked mansion doors? Which romances left more than just broken vows, rewriting Hollywood history in whispers and shadows? Stay with us, because sometimes the most explosive endings never made the headlines. They left their mark where no camera could ever go. 1. Elizabeth Taylor and Eddie Fischer. It started at a funeral, but it became the headline scandal of the decade. Elizabeth Taylor, Hollywood's most mesmerizing siren, was in mourning after her husband Mike Todd died in a plane crash. Enter Eddie Fischer, her close friend, and crucially, the devoted husband of America's sweetheart, Debbie Reynolds. In the sanitized world of 1950s celebrity, Fischer's image as a crooner and Reynolds's as a devoted wife were untouchable. That is, until grief turned to comfort, and comfort ignited into a full-blown affair. At first, the tabloids whispered. Then they roared, as Fischer abruptly walked out on Reynolds and their children, leaving a trail of devastation behind him. Taylor, once known for her on-screen passion, was now painted as a homewrecker, hounded by photographers wherever she went. The affair didn't just end 2 marriages, it demolished Hollywood's illusion of domestic bliss and forced the studio system to scramble. MGM, which had groomed Taylor and Reynolds as poster children of innocence, was suddenly in crisis mode, desperately trying to contain the fallout. Headlines screamed betrayal. Moviegoers booed Taylor and Fischer in public appearances. Debbie Reynolds, betrayed by her best friend, was cast as the real-life heroine in the drama. Yet the love story at the center quickly unraveled. Taylor and Fischer married in 1959, only to have Taylor begin another scandalous affair with Richard Burton a few years later, again under the glare of worldwide attention. As for Fischer, his career never fully recovered from the public's outrage. By the 1970s, he was more punchline than pop idol. Even years later, Reynolds joked, "We just traded husbands." But for a generation of moviegoers, the Taylor-Fischer scandal marked the end of Hollywood innocence, proving that even the most glamorous stars could be vilified overnight when private passion boiled over into public view. 2. Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. If Elizabeth Taylor's first brush with scandal scorched Hollywood's image of domestic bliss, her affair with Richard Burton incinerated it. It began on the set of Cleopatra, a film so lavish and troubled it seemed almost cursed. Taylor was still married to Eddie Fischer, fresh off one of the industry's biggest scandals. Burton was also married to Sybil Williams. Their on-screen chemistry was electric, but it was nothing compared to what simmered off-camera. The cast and crew whispered about the stolen moments and late-night rendezvous, but it didn't take long for the world to catch on. Paparazzi hounded them across continents. The Vatican condemned Taylor's conduct as erotic vagrancy. Headlines around the world called their love affair obscene, decadent, and, in the words of one paper, the most publicized illicit romance in history. The pressure mounted on both marriages. Fischer tried to hold on, but he was no match for Taylor's growing obsession with Burton. Sybil Williams, humiliated and abandoned, filed for divorce. In 1964, Taylor and Burton finally wed in a feverish media storm. Their union would become one of Hollywood's most volatile, full of passion, extravagance, and frequent, spectacular fights. The public couldn't look away. Studios once banked on keeping stars' scandals under wraps, but Taylor and Burton were too famous to hide. Their affair didn't just end 2 marriages, it rewrote the rules of celebrity, ushering in an era where Hollywood's private passions played out on a global stage. For the rest of their lives, Taylor and Burton's romance, on and off again, scandalous and unforgettable, remained a symbol of the glamour and destructiveness that defined the Golden Age. 3. Clark Gable and Carole Lombard. For years, Clark Gable was the undisputed king of Hollywood, ruggedly handsome, impossibly charming, and trailed by rumors of a romantic life as varied as his film roles. His escapades filled gossip columns, but true intimacy seemed elusive until Carole Lombard strode into his life. Lombard, already famous for her razor wit and screwball comedies, matched Gable's swagger with her own brand of fearless bawdy humor. Their first meetings were electric. Their exchanges on set crackled with innuendo and laughter, leaving onlookers certain that something extraordinary was brewing. There was one monumental obstacle: Gable's existing marriage to Maria Langham. Although their relationship had long grown cold, the studio system was desperate to keep Gable's personal life out of scandal's reach. Executives leaned on columnists, manufactured harmless stories, and worked overtime to protect their biggest star and Lombard's hard-won reputation. Meanwhile, Gable and Lombard's romance flourished in the shadows. They sent one another clandestine, sometimes risque telegrams, rendezvoused at country retreats, and cultivated a world of private jokes and shared mischief. Friends swore Lombard was the first woman to ever truly unnerve and delight Gable, and for her, he was the love she'd always chased in a town built on illusion. When Gable's divorce finally came through, the pair wasted no time. In 1939, they married in a modest ceremony, eschewing studio spectacle for something genuine. For once, Gable seemed liberated, living openly, laughing easily, happier than Hollywood had ever allowed him to be. But fate intervened with devastating cruelty. In 1942, Lombard died in a tragic plane crash, leaving Gable broken. Overcome by grief, he enlisted in the army, his private heartbreak spilling quietly into the public eye. Their secret love affair, once carefully hidden, became one of Hollywood's most enduring legends, a brief, blazing testament to passion, vulnerability, and the unpredictable cost of real happiness in a town that rarely allows it. 4. Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall. When Humphrey Bogart met Lauren Bacall on the set of To Have and Have Not in 1944, few could have predicted the seismic shift it would create in both their lives and in Hollywood legend. Bogart was 44 at the peak of his career, known for his tough guy roles and an off-screen marriage as turbulent as any film noir. His wife, Mayo Methot, was equally tempestuous, their explosive arguments earning them the tabloid nickname, the Battling Bogarts. Into this storm walked Lauren Bacall, just 19, strikingly beautiful, with a smoky voice and confidence that belied her youth. From their first scenes together, the attraction was magnetic. Between takes, Bogart and Bacall exchanged lingering glances and late-night conversations, forming a bond that was both tender and electric. Hollywood insiders took notice, whispering about the brewing affair, but the studio machine was determined to keep their star's reputation untarnished. Publicly, Bogart remained the dutiful husband. Privately, he and Bacall slipped into a world of secret rendezvous and growing affection. Methot's suspicions soon turned to open jealousy, and her drinking worsened as the marriage spiraled into ever more violent confrontations, some even spilling into public view. Unable to sustain the charade, Bogart filed for divorce. The news hit Hollywood like a thunderclap, but what followed was something rare. Bogart and Bacall's romance didn't fade under scrutiny, it flourished. In 1945, the pair married, beginning a partnership marked by deep affection, mutual respect, and a rare sense of equality. Theirs became one of Hollywood's most enduring love stories, lasting until Bogart's death in 1957. Yet, it was born from secrecy, heartbreak, and the risk of public ruin, a reminder that, in the glare of the studio lights, true connection sometimes demands both sacrifice and scandal. 5. Ingrid Bergman and Roberto Rossellini. Ingrid Bergman was the embodiment of Hollywood innocence, adored by millions for her performances in Casablanca, Gaslight, and Notorious. Her image was one of unassailable virtue, beauty, grace, and an almost ethereal goodness that audiences and studios alike guarded jealously. Yet, behind the scenes, Bergman yearned for more than the safe, conventional roles that defined her stardom. In the late 1940s, she reached out to Roberto Rossellini, the trailblazing Italian director famed for his gritty, neo-realist films, seeking creative challenge and something more. The collaboration quickly ignited into a torrid affair. At the time, Bergman was married to Dr. Peter Lindstrom and the mother of a young daughter. On the volcanic island set of Stromboli, passion and artistry became inseparable. Soon, Bergman was pregnant with Rossellini's child, and the news shattered the boundaries of private indiscretion and public scandal. The backlash was immediate and ferocious. The U.S. Senate condemned Bergman as a powerful influence for evil, denouncing her from the chamber floor. Churches organized boycotts. Towns banned her films. The press, which had once celebrated her as a model of decency, now vilified her as the fallen angel of Hollywood. Under this withering scrutiny, Bergman's marriage crumbled, and she left America in disgrace. She married Rossellini and started a new family in Italy, living in self-imposed exile, while her name remained toxic in Hollywood circles. For years, she was barred from American screens, her legacy seemingly destroyed. But Bergman's resilience was as remarkable as her talent. A decade later, she returned to the U.S. and won a triumphant Oscar for Anastasia, her comeback marking one of the great second acts in film history. Still, the Rossellini affair stood as the pivotal moment, a bold, costly choice that showed, in old Hollywood, even a goddess could fall, and sometimes rise again, in the glare of love and scandal. 6. Rita Hayworth and Prince Ali Khan. In the late 1940s, Rita Hayworth was at the very peak of her stardom, celebrated everywhere as Hollywood's love goddess. Her fiery beauty and sultry performances made her one of Columbia Pictures' most prized assets. But behind the scenes, her personal life was in turmoil. After her whirlwind, troubled marriage to Orson Welles began to crumble. Hayworth was swept off her feet by Prince Ali Khan, the playboy son of the Aga Khan and a fixture of the international jet set. The timing was scandalous. Hayworth was still legally married when their affair ignited, and Khan was hardly free of romantic entanglements himself. Their passionate rendezvous became front-page news, especially as Hayworth's divorce from Welles stalled and the couple continued to be photographed together on the French Riviera. Studio bosses were furious. Not only did Hayworth's new romance threaten her wholesome image, but she also refused lucrative roles and abandoned Hollywood to live abroad. When the divorce was finally settled, Hayworth married Prince Ali Khan in a lavish ceremony in France in 1949, instantly becoming international royalty. Yet the fairy tale quickly soured. The realities of palace life clashed with Hayworth's independent spirit. Pressures from Khan's family, constant tabloid scrutiny, and Khan's notorious infidelities all took their toll. Within a few years, Hworth filed for divorce, returning to Hollywood with her young daughter, Princess Yasmin. The aftermath was messy: custody battles, lost opportunities, and a public eager for scandal. Hayworth's marriage to Ali Khan didn't just end one of old Hollywood's iconic marriages. It marked the point where her own legend became a story of longing and heartbreak. Her image forever changed from love goddess to woman, searching for happiness in a world that thrived on her pain. 7. Joan Crawford and Francho Tone. Joan Crawford's ascent in Hollywood was legendary. Her ambition, drive, and calculated charisma making her a dominant force both on and off the screen. By the early 1930s, she was a reigning queen of MGM, admired and feared in equal measure. Enter Francho Tone, a sophisticated, up-and-coming actor whose classic good looks and stage pedigree caught the eyes of the industry and those of Crawford herself. Their meeting on the set of Dancing Lady in 1933 sparked instant chemistry, but their romance was tangled from the start. Tone was already engaged to none other than Jean Harlo, the dazzling platinum blonde who was MGM's other leading siren. Hollywood's grapevine buzzed with whispers as Crawford and Tone's after-hours rehearsals became routine, stretching late into the night and raising eyebrows across the lot. Despite Tone's engagement, Crawford's allure and relentless pursuit proved irresistible. What began as a subtle flirtation soon evolved into a passionate affair that couldn't be kept under wraps. By 1935, the pressure was too much. Tone broke off his engagement to Harlo and married Crawford, igniting a new firestorm of gossip and heartbreak. Yet, the marriage proved as volatile as the triangle that spawned it. Crawford's need to control every aspect of her life, combined with her fierce jealousy and persistent rumors of infidelity, especially with her frequent co-star Clark Gable, eroded any foundation of trust. Tone, overshadowed by Crawford's star power and battling his own frustrations, turned increasingly to alcohol for solace. Their union was marked by public arguments, professional jealousy, and relentless media scrutiny. Within 4 years, the relationship imploded in a very public divorce. leaving behind a trail of fractured friendships, bitter rivalries, and hard lessons. The fallout deepened Crawford's reputation as both a Hollywood powerhouse and a dangerously formidable romantic rival. In the annals of Hollywood history, the Crawford-Tone affair remains a testament to how ambition, passion, and betrayal could entangle even the most brilliant stars and leave them lonelier than before. 8. Lana Turner and Lex Barker. Lana Turner's life glittered with Hollywood allure, but away from the limelight, her story was a storm of heartbreak, resilience, and deep scandal. By the early 1950s, Turner was at the peak of her stardom, famed for both her magnetic screen presence and her tumultuous private life. Her fourth marriage, to Lex Barker, the dashing actor celebrated as Tarzan, seemed at first to promise the stability and glamour befitting a Hollywood power couple. Barker's rugged good looks and suave charm captivated Turner, who longed for lasting love after a string of broken relationships. Yet, behind their polished public image, darkness was brewing. As the marriage progressed, Turner grew uneasy, sensing a growing emotional distance and tension at home. The real catastrophe struck when Turner's teenage daughter, Cheryl Crane, came forward with an accusation that would shock the nation. Barker had been abusing her. Turner, blindsided and desperate for the truth, at first found it impossible to believe. But as the painful reality emerged through Cheryl's tears and Barker's evasions, Turner's protective instincts overpowered any lingering doubts. In a moment of fierce maternal resolve, she threw Barker out, ending the marriage on the spot. The revelation detonated in the press. Turner, already no stranger to sensational headlines, found herself at the center of a scandal that eclipsed even her most famous affairs. Barker's once promising career was instantly derailed. He became a Hollywood pariah, his reputation irreparably tarnished. Turner, though supported by much of the public for her actions, was left with wounds that would never fully heal, her family forever marked by trauma. The episode exposed the painful cost of Hollywood's golden illusions, revealing the deep, hidden suffering that could exist behind the world's most beautiful faces. For Lana Turner, the end of her marriage to Barker was not just a personal tragedy, but a grim reckoning with the limits of fame and the realities that even the brightest stars could not escape. 9. Vivian Leigh and Laurence Olivier. Before Vivian Leigh and Laurence Olivier were immortalized as one of the greatest couples in stage and film history, their love story was a whirlwind of scandal and secrecy. Leigh, with her ethereal beauty and relentless ambition, was already married to barrister Lee Holman when she crossed paths with Olivier, who himself was bound to actress Jill Esmond. What began as a shared admiration in the close-knit world of London theater quickly spiraled into a passionate, forbidden romance that neither fame nor respectability could contain. Their affair was conducted in stolen moments and whispered confidences, secret rendezvous in backstage corridors, coded letters slipped between productions, and longing glances exchanged on film sets. The depth of their obsession became public decades later when their love letters were published, revealing a feverish connection marked by longing, guilt, and mutual desperation to be together. But in the conservative climate of 1930s, Britain and Hollywood, divorce was more than a personal crisis. It was a professional and social catastrophe. The gossip soon grew impossible to ignore. Spouses discovered the truth, the press circled like vultures, and both Leigh and Olivier faced the loss of friends, roles, and reputation. Undeterred, they endured the legal and emotional fallout, each finalizing their divorces amid the glare of public censure. In 1940, they finally wed, their union hailed in fan magazines, but forever shadowed by the sacrifices made to achieve it. Though their marriage produced unforgettable collaborations and was revered by many, the cost was steep. Leigh, already fragile, struggled with mental illness, exacerbated by the relentless pressures of fame and her tempestuous relationship with Olivier. For both, the love that once seemed destined to conquer all brought as much heartache as it did joy. Their story stands as a reminder that even Hollywood's grandest romances often come at a price, one measured in heartbreak, resilience, and the pursuit of a connection too powerful for the world to ignore. 10. Charlie Chaplan and Lita Grey. Few scandals hit early Hollywood with the force and fallout of Charlie Chaplin's marriage and spectacular divorce from Lita Gray. Chaplan, already an international icon by the early 1920s, had built his brand on the lovable innocence of the tramp, but his personal life was tangled in secrets and risk. He first encountered Lita Gray when she was a young teenager working as an extra on his sets. Their relationship began in shadows, a product of Hollywood's most hidden corridors, made all the more urgent by Chaplin's existing marriage and Lita's youth. When Lita became pregnant at 16, the situation threatened to erupt into a scandal so severe it could have ended Chaplin's career and even landed him in jail. Panicked, Chaplan arranged a secret wedding across the border in Mexico in 1924, hoping to control the narrative. The marriage, however, proved a disaster almost immediately. Chaplin's need for secrecy and his controlling temperament clashed with Lita's growing resentment and sense of isolation. With Chaplan consumed by work and paranoia about the press, Lita found herself living in a gilded cage, her every move scrutinized and her voice silenced. When the inevitable collapse came, it did so with a vengeance. Lita Gray's divorce filing was explosive, packed with lurid accusations, mental cruelty, infidelity, and what the era called moral depravity. The case became an international sensation, the tabloids feasting on every sordid detail. For weeks, Chaplin's image was battered as private letters, testimonies, and claims of bizarre behavior were splashed across headlines. Hollywood's first true divorce circus, the Chaplan-Gray debacle, didn't just end a marriage. It set the blueprint for celebrity scandal, showing the world that the men and women behind the camera lived lives as dramatic as anything on screen. For Chaplan and Gray, there was no retreat from public view. The fallout would haunt both for the rest of their lives. 11. Greta, Garbo, and Salka. Viertel. Greta Garbo was the queen of mystery, her aura so intense that even her closest friends struggled to decipher her true desires. Off-screen, Garbo's deepest connections were forged in secrecy, far from Hollywood's prying eyes. In the late 1920s and 1930s, Garbo found emotional sanctuary with Salka Viertel, a German-born screenwriter 6 years her senior. Viertel became more than just a confidant. She was Garbo's anchor, her creative collaborator, and, if the diaries and letters are to be believed, her secret love. The studio system demanded that Garbo's private life remain shrouded, so their bond was carefully hidden from public view. Viertel was married, and Garbo's intense private affairs with both Viertel and, later, playwright Mercedes de Acosta, forced each woman to choose between public acceptance and personal fulfillment. De Acosta, openly lesbian and fiercely flamboyant, would later publish personal letters, and even a private photograph of Garbo, sparking a bitter end to their relationship and igniting whispers throughout Hollywood. The secrecy of Garbo's affairs not only ended her closest friendships, but also fractured Viertel's marriage, setting off ripples through their social circle. For Garbo, who would never marry, these relationships became the emotional core of her life, a private rebellion against the era's strict moral codes. Their stories remained largely unspoken in public for decades, but the scars endured, showing that in Hollywood, love could break hearts and marriages, even if no one dared speak its name. 12th, Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor. Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor once embodied Hollywood's ideal of wedded bliss. Nicknamed the Golden Couple, they were as much a product of the studio machine as their own ambitions, an alliance carefully crafted and relentlessly marketed to the public. Their paths first crossed in the early 1930s, when MGM executives saw potential not just for cinematic chemistry, but for a romance that could fend off scandal. By the time they wed in 1939, both stars had reached the peak of their fame, their union a dazzling display of glamour for the gossip columns and fan magazines. But beneath the glittering exterior, the marriage was less a love story and more a carefully balanced arrangement. Hollywood insiders, quick to read between the lines, whispered that the studio encouraged the match to dispel persistent rumors about Taylor's sexuality, a secret the era's press would never print, but which shaped the lives of many leading men. For Stanwyck, who had navigated her own hardships and carried the weight of being a woman in a man's world, the partnership offered stability and status, even as it demanded discretion and sacrifice. Yet, even Hollywood's best PR couldn't disguise the cracks that began to form. The couple's emotional distance grew as each sought comfort elsewhere, Taylor in the arms of glamorous co-stars, Stanwick in the confidences and possible romantic attachments of close female friends. The relentless pressure to maintain a perfect facade, coupled with the grinding realities of two high-powered careers, slowly eroded whatever real connection had existed. By the late 1940s, separation was inevitable, though the divorce was managed with the same secrecy as their marriage's origins. Fans were left with questions and rumors, but few answers. The story of Barbara Stanwyck and Robert Taylor remains a cautionary tale. Even Hollywood's most radiant unions were vulnerable to the shadows that fame could never quite illuminate. 13. Jean Harlo and William Powell. Jean Harlo, Hollywood's original blonde bombshell, lived and loved at a velocity few could match. By her early 20s, she had become MGM's top star, her platinum hair and magnetic screen presence drawing audiences and suitors alike. Yet, when she met William Powell, a debonair leading man almost 20 years her senior, Harlo found a kind of love she'd never known. Powell, himself twice divorced and jaded by the pitfalls of Hollywood romance, was captivated by Harlo's energy and vulnerability. Their chemistry was immediate, igniting a secret affair that would defy the rigid studio system and scandal-obsessed tabloids of the era. MGM, fiercely protective of Harlo's image as an unattainable siren, demanded absolute discretion. Any whiff of a relationship could shatter her carefully constructed persona and jeopardize both their careers. Powell, still legally married when the romance began, was no stranger to the public eye, but the stakes had never been higher. Together, they orchestrated clandestine dinners, private getaways, and a hidden exchange of lavish gifts, always careful to avoid the ever-present paparazzi and the sharp eyes of studio executives. What set their romance apart was an intimacy that transcended Hollywood's usual flings. Powell supported Harlo through health crises and family troubles, offering stability in a world of chaos. Tragically, Harlo's sudden illness and death at just 26 ended their plans for marriage. In her final days, Powell stood by her side, and it was he who arranged for her burial, ensuring she was laid to rest in a white gown he had given her, a symbol of their love. For Powell, the loss was a wound that never fully healed. Their story remains one of classic Hollywood's most poignant secret affairs, a fleeting love marked by devotion, tenderness, and the unrelenting pressures of fame. 14. Joan Crawford and Clark Gable. Joan Crawford and Clark Gable were the very definition of Hollywood royalty, two magnetic personalities whose names still conjure images of old-school glamour and passion. Their first encounter on the set of Dance, Fools, Dance in 1931 sparked a connection so intense it would linger in one form or another for nearly 20 years. On screen, their chemistry was electric, but off-screen, it was incendiary, fueled by mutual admiration, fierce ambition, and an undeniable physical attraction that neither marriage vows nor studio contracts could extinguish. Both were no strangers to commitment. Crawford's marriages to Douglas Fairbanks Jr. and later to Francho Tone, and Gable's to Maria Langham and Carol Lombard, among others, were headline material. Yet, throughout their various unions, the Crawford-Gable affair simmered just beneath the surface, managed with the careful choreography of publicists and the tacit cooperation of the studios. Hollywood insiders gossiped endlessly, and the circle of those truly in the know was far wider than most fans realized. The relationship was never without consequence. Friends and confidants frequently pointed to their passionate rendezvous as the cause of ruptured marriages, bitter feuds, and emotional turmoil. Gable's attempts at settling into domestic life were constantly undermined by his enduring fascination with Crawford, whose own drive and unapologetic pursuit of happiness made her both irresistible and dangerous to the men around her. Over the years, their romance waxed and waned, sometimes cooling to a friendship, sometimes reigniting into an affair that would upend their personal lives. Ultimately, the Crawford-Gable story became the template for Hollywood's most complex and destructive love affairs, a secret everyone knew, a passion everyone envied, and a trail of heartbreak that was impossible to hide. Their bond revealed the tension beneath the glamour of old Hollywood, proving that even the biggest stars could not escape the shadows cast by their own desires. 15. Anthony Quinn and Katherine DeMille. In a city obsessed with appearance and allure, Anthony Quinn stood out even among legends. His striking presence, both brooding and magnetic, made him a natural fit for the silver screen, and for a life marked by passion and tumult. When Quinn married Katherine DeMille, the accomplished actress and daughter of cinematic titan Cecil B. DeMille, it seemed like the perfect union of Hollywood dynasties. Their wedding united two powerful families, drawing attention and envy from the city's elite. Yet beneath the dazzling surface, cracks began to appear almost immediately. Quinn's restless spirit and reputation as a romantic led to a marriage plagued by whispers and suspicion. Industry insiders gossiped endlessly about his alleged affairs, with a string of glamorous co-stars, some only fleeting rumors, others barely concealed. From intimate trysts on location shoots to affairs stretching across continents, the stories followed Quinn wherever he worked. Katherine, well aware of Hollywood's temptations, at first tried to ignore the rumors, focusing on her own career and their growing family. But the constant barrage of gossip, coupled with Quinn's own later admissions of infidelity, slowly eroded her trust. The strain proved too much. DeMille found herself increasingly isolated, caught between loyalty to her husband and the legacy of her famous father. Eventually, the weight of Quinn's betrayals became unbearable, and the couple's marriage dissolved in bitterness and heartbreak. The divorce was a public affair, scrutinized by the press and dissected by Hollywood's inner circle. For Katherine DeMille, the marriage served as a cautionary tale about the personal cost of loving a legend. For Anthony Quinn, it was another chapter in a life fueled by appetite and ambition, undimmed by consequence. Their story stands as a reminder that in old Hollywood, the most intoxicating charisma often came with a destructive shadow, and that even the grandest unions could be undone by secrets that no studio could hide. 16. Errol Flynn and Beverly Adland. By the end of the 1950s, Errol Flynn was Hollywood's most notorious hellraiser, an icon whose good looks and reckless bravado had made him both beloved and feared. Yet nothing in his career or personal life would spark as much outrage, scandal, and sorrow as his final love affair. Flynn met Beverly Adland, a strikingly beautiful and naive teenager, when she was just 15. Flynn, by then in his late 40s and already mired in controversy, was still legally married when he began pursuing Adland with relentless charm. Their relationship quickly became an open secret among insiders, but the public and the press remained in the dark as Flynn moved Adland into his world of luxury, late-night parties, and foreign adventures. Flynn's marriage, already battered by years of infidelity, simply collapsed under the weight of his obsession with Adland. His wife, unable to compete with her husband's self-destructive desires and the allure of his youthful lover, finally gave up. After Flynn's sudden death in 1959, tabloids feasted on the lurid details of the affair, the vast age difference, the wild trips abroad, and the rumors that Adland had been kept in luxury while Flynn's career and marriage imploded. Adland, just 17 at the time of Flynn's death, was thrust unwillingly into the glare of infamy. She would later recount the emotional toll and trauma of her time with Flynn in books and interviews, but the stain of scandal would follow her for the rest of her life. Hollywood, never shy about exposing others' weaknesses, turned Flynn's private tragedy into a public spectacle, and Adland's youth and innocence were collateral damage. The Flynn-Adland affair became a cautionary tale, a symbol of power imbalances, broken vows, and the dark consequences when celebrity and secrecy collide in a town that profits from both. 17. Myrna Loy and Arthur Hornblow, Jr. Myrna Loy was Hollywood's emblem of sophistication, her on-screen personas radiating intelligence, wit, and effortless grace. She became America's ideal of the modern woman, especially in classics like The Thin Man, where her portrayal of Nora Charles set a new standard for smart, loving partnership. Off-screen, however, Loy's personal life was a tangle of unmet needs and heartache, most painfully evident in her marriage to producer Arthur Hornblow, Jr. The pair wed in 1936, and for a time, their union seemed to mirror the harmony Loy projected in her films. Hornblow, an accomplished and respected producer, appeared the perfect match, a man able to navigate the complex social world of Hollywood with poise and charm. Yet, as Loy's star continued to rise, cracks formed beneath their glamorous surface. Hornblow grew resentful of Loy's fame, feeling overshadowed by her relentless work schedule and growing acclaim. Loy, in turn, longed for an emotional depth and artistic connection that Hornblow, increasingly preoccupied with his own frustrations, struggled to provide. Rumors soon began to swirl about Loy's relationship with director John Cromwell. Their creative collaborations were marked by an intimacy that insiders claimed extended beyond the professional. Hollywood's grapevine buzzed with speculation, and though Loy and Hornblow maintained an outward image of unity, their marriage quietly unraveled behind closed doors. In 1942, the couple divorced. No scandalous headlines, just the quiet acknowledgement of love gone cold. The whispers about Cromwell's role in the breakup persisted, but Loy and Hornblow both kept the details private. For Loy, subsequent marriages would be haunted by the emotional scars left by her first union. For Hornblow, the loss was deeply personal and public. Their story remains a reminder that behind Hollywood's most polished images, even the brightest stars endured loneliness, longing, and the high price of love in the spotlight. 18. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn. Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn's love story is the stuff of Hollywood legend, an affair that captured imaginations for decades, but whose reality was far more complex than any movie script. Tracy, one of the era's most revered actors, was already married to Louise Treadwell, a commitment rooted in both tradition and his unwavering Catholic faith. When he met Hepburn on the set of Woman of the Year in 1941, their chemistry was undeniable, igniting a romance that would span over a quarter century. But this was no simple affair. Tracy, bound by conscience and religion, refused to divorce Louise, leaving Hepburn in the role of a perpetual other woman, her love and devotion forever in the shadows. Despite these constraints, Tracy and Hepburn became inseparable. They starred together in 9 iconic films, supporting each other through health crises, professional highs and lows, and Tracy's well-documented struggles with alcoholism. Their private world was a sanctuary, a space where they could be themselves, away from the relentless glare of Hollywood's spotlight. Yet, their relationship was built on sacrifice. Hepburn, fiercely independent and accomplished in her own right, accepted the limitations placed upon her by Tracy's unbreakable marital ties. For Louise, marriage grew ever more hollow. Her heartbreak was an open secret among friends, but rarely discussed in public. The public saw only the surface: witty banter, creative partnership, a seemingly perfect companionship. But beneath it was a poignant reality: years of unspoken pain, longing, and resignation. When Tracy died in 1967, Hepburn's absence at his funeral spoke volumes. Out of respect for his family and the boundaries that had always defined their love, she mourned privately. Their story, immortalized on screen, endures as one of Hollywood's most touching romances, a testament not only to devotion and partnership, but also to the silent, profound cost that sometimes accompanies great love. 19th, Liza Minnelli and Peter Allen. Liza Minnelli's 1967 marriage to Peter Allen had all the makings of a Hollywood fairy tale. 2 dazzling young talents, both rising stars, united by a shared love of music, performance, and the hope for a happiness that had long eluded them. Liza, daughter of legendary Judy Garland and acclaimed director Vincent Minnelli, was determined to find stability in her own life, carving a path different from the turbulence of her famous family. Peter Allen, a gifted Australian singer-songwriter with magnetic charm, seemed to offer just that. But beneath the applause and carefully curated public appearances, secrets threatened to unravel everything. Allen, by all accounts, was a loving partner, creative, supportive, and attentive. Yet, he was also living with a truth he couldn't share in the conservative climate of late 1960s America. He was gay. According to Hollywood lore, Minnelli discovered the reality on their wedding night, walking in on Allen with another man. Whether apocryphal or not, the shock left deep scars, and the marriage became an exhausting charade. Rumors swirled that Allen's relationships with men, including, allegedly, Minnelli's stepfather, were an open secret in Hollywood's inner circles. Desperate to maintain normalcy, Liza threw herself into her work and public appearances, standing by Alan's side, even as their emotional connection frayed. The strain became unbearable, with both partners seeking solace in other relationships. Liza herself began an affair in a bid to fill the void left by the marriage's emotional absence. In 1974, the couple quietly divorced, parting ways with more sadness than anger. For Alan, the end of the marriage marked the start of a more authentic life, eventually living openly as a gay man. For Manelli, it was a painful lesson in the limits of loyalty and the cost of keeping up appearances. Their story remains a reminder that, in old Hollywood, heartbreak and secrecy often went hand in hand with stardom. 20. Joan Crawford and Douglas Fairbanks Jr. Joan Crawford's marriage to Douglas Fairbanks Jr. in 1929 was hailed as a match made in Hollywood heaven, uniting a rising starlet with the son of silent film legend Douglas Fairbanks Sr. Their wedding was a media sensation, a glittering event that promised to merge two dynasties and usher in a new era of screen royalty. Crawford's drive and ambition were already legend, while Fairbanks Jr., handsome and pedigreed, was determined to carve his own place in the industry. But what began as a glamorous partnership quickly devolved into a struggle for identity and trust. The realities of stardom soon strained their young marriage. Crawford's career was ascending at breakneck speed, her talent and charisma drawing both critical acclaim and tabloid attention. Fairbanks Jr., meanwhile, wrestled with the enormous shadow cast by his father's fame, striving to prove himself on his own merits. The couple's home became a revolving door for Hollywood's elite, but beneath the sparkle, insecurities festered. Gossip columnists pounced on rumors of Crawford's growing closeness with her charismatic co-star Clark Gable, rumors that Fairbanks found hard to ignore. Door for Hollywood's elite, but beneath the sparkle, insecurities festered. Gossip columnists pounced on rumors of Crawford's growing closeness with her charismatic co-star Clark Gable, rumors that Fairbanks found hard to ignore. Jealousy and suspicion crept in, eroding whatever trust had once existed. Crawford and Fairbanks Jr. each sought validation outside the marriage, their connection weakened by the demands of the studio system and constant scrutiny. Hollywood's insatiable appetite for scandal only fueled the fire, magnifying every perceived slight and real or imagined affair. By 1933, the pressure proved too great. Their divorce was finalized, the end of a union that had once seemed destined for greatness. For Crawford, it was a familiar pattern: sacrifice love for ambition, endure heartbreak for a shot at immortality. For Fairbanks Jr., the split was a painful lesson in the perils of loving someone the world demanded for itself. Their story endures as a cautionary tale of Hollywood's golden age, where fame, expectation, and desire could unravel even the most dazzling romance. Old Hollywood's greatest romances rarely matched the scripts they performed. Behind every red carpet and perfect pose, affairs burned away the facades, shattering marriages, destroying careers, and leaving scars that never truly healed. The legends who built the Dream Factory paid dearly for passion, rewriting their own stories in shadows far from the spotlight. Today, their secrets still echo through Hollywood's haunted corridors, reminding us that for every silver screen fairy tale, there's a heartbreak just out of frame, waiting, perhaps forever, to be revealed.